Everyone. I'm really sorry that we had no possibility to meet today online during the webinar, but sometimes technology brings challenges. And even for me, the person who really advocates for the innovation and the technology in the healthcare, sometimes it happens that during the first 15 minutes, people just don't hear what I'm saying. So I decided to make it easy because, of course, I don't want to disturb your working schedule, and I don't want to be for you to be late for some of the other important things during your day. That's why I decided just to make the video record of the webinar. I will share this video record with everyone who were interested to be at the attendees of this webinar. And then I'm highly welcome as soon as you have any questions or maybe some topics we won't be fully covered within this webinar, within this record, please come back to me and I will share even more. I will answer your questions and I will be super happy. One more time, guys, sorry for the inconvenience. This happens and sometimes we need to be more flexible that we are. So let us start with this. We have a very important topic, but in third-party AI providers for today. Why this topic is important? Because AI emerges. So we have a lot of the AI news, AI trends that we see every week, even if you're not the technical specialist. If you're just the medical professional, you might see already a lot of the news from the different perspectives about AI every day. And of course, companies, the business companies come into the idea that they can sell AI tools for the healthcare institutions. And that's why they really try to find this sweet spot and to come to the healthcare providers, advising them some kind of the AI tools to have and to try together. So we will try together to cover the most important topics. Among them, of course, is the key risk factors to think about when deciding on implementing of any kind of AI tools within your organization. Then, of course, the technical evaluation of AI tools and how you can go with that. Vendor due diligence, data ownership and user rights, and successful pilot program design. As usually, guys, it won't be in the technical terms, so everything will be explained in the most understandable way. No worries, even with the technical evaluation, we won't touch any kind of the sensitive technical things that might mislead you. So it will be just in the general terms for you to understand how to build the successful due diligence process when deciding on AI vendor. So here's the slide that underlines the current landscape of the medical AI. And it's important to understand that right now, all the sites involved in it. So we have the established players like the big tech giants. We have the emerging and leading competitors, so the mid-sized companies that already have a big portion of the market and they are stable. And of course, we have startups, and the startups come and they're more niche to try to acquire the different areas, and they try to establish the market on these areas. Why it's important to understand? Because both tech giants and the startups can contact you, can try to get your attention. And it's important to differentiate the strong sides and the limitation on both of all these providers. Like if we talk about the tech giants, if companies like Google will come to you, you need to understand that these companies have a huge advantage in the massive data that was used to train the model. So the model are broader in understanding. The accuracy might be better. We will talk about the accuracy. That's not definitely the metrics that you need to rely, but anyway, the overall accuracy might be better. They have, of course, the better access to the computer power. It means that they can develop the more robust models. If we're talking about the generative AI, of course, such a big amount of the computational power might be not available on the startup side. So tech giants really, they have the privilege here. Then, of course, integration into the ecosystem. If you already use some kind of the Google products or Microsoft Office and you want to have AI for the workflow automation within your medical organization, then, of course, the tools like developed by the same companies might be much better for you because you don't need to spend time or putting everything inside one ecosystem of yours. And then, of course, they have the better access to the top talent and research investments, scalability. So that's the whole thing that we can incorporate inside the big companies. They have much more possibilities. When thinking about the startups, of course, they need to bring something differently. And one of the main differentiator of them is the agility and the niche focus. So they really want to find the customers. They really want to make the products that will satisfy the user cases for you to decide on cooperation with them. That's why they really can bring a lot of the value developing the products that will be tailored for your use case, not in general, but basically on your needs. That's the main thing that might be interesting for you to think when deciding about AI tools, especially if you have some kind of the very difficult or very different use cases and you need to cover their needs with AI. They have, of course, closer customer relationship because for the big companies, you might be the very valuable clients if you're big enough, if you bring a big check with you. But if you're mid to small size client, then of course the speed of the communication and the client support will be much different. But for the startups, no matter of your size, because they try to capture the market, they try to find the new clients, you will be the best customer despite on the size that you might have. And of course, they are more flexible in the technical structure. Yep. So startups can rebuild the whole from scratch if needed, if you're really the valuable customer for them. And they can find the tech stack that will be the more applicable based on your IT infrastructure. And of course, they have disruptive potential. They want to make this world better. That's why if you have some kind of the R&D direction, you want to develop something, going with the startups might be more interesting for you. Very slightly about the market growth. So we have according to the latest data, 79% of the healthcare organization utilizing AI. That's in US. I would admit that in EU, the numbers might be different. But what's important here is to understanding of this utilization thing. It doesn't mean that all of them are using AI already in the clinical practice. It means that they're looking for the use cases. They're piloting some AI tools together with the AI vendors, and they assessing this return on the investment that they can go from the business perspective, from the clinical perspective when having these AI tools. The interesting also to understand is that, of course, investment market is booming here and investors are going to very effective and very interested in the medical AI field, but with a smart understanding that, for example, administrative AI, like the virtual assistants or the clinical note taking, is more in favor for the investors because of the ease of the implementation and the clear ROI that the clinical institutions might get from these tools. So it's better to invest in the tools that you can later on sell and get the profit from. And of course, still the big portion of the investors looking for the clinical AI investment focuses on the diagnosis, like the oncology or the imaging. But here it's important to understand that it's basically around some use cases and in the collaboration with the medical institution. Still, of course, the imaging and the oncology has the huge history of the previous research. That's the areas where I might say that it's easier to get the positive outcomes from AI system because we understand this area quite good. But in the implementation area, we will compare the administrative and the, for example, oncology or imaging AI tools. Then, of course, administrative will be much more easy to test and to align as the strategy for the AI testing in the clinics. One interesting case study here that we can see is like in 2019, Mayo Clinic decided to partnership with the Google Cloud, firstly stated for the data storage and AI development, and they have 10 years strategy for the partnership. Interesting here that in the roadmap of this cooperation, they have started with a low risk area like the data storage and the security. working on this and understanding the capabilities of the vendor of the Google Cloud platform. And then from this, when they have stated that it's effective and they can go with that, they started to developing the very interesting and innovative initiatives here, like, for example, AI and machine learning applications in the different areas. And in 2023, they even said that they want to go for the generative AI for the healthcare using Google Enterprise Search on generative AI builder. That's a very wise approach and very good case study when the company, like the Mayo Clinic, the medical organization, understands the needs and understands the safe strategy, how to go with the vendor, not jump into AI at the first hand, but firstly trying it on the lower risk area and developing the strategy how to go together further on. Here we will start with the first section, understanding the stakes, just to speak very shortly about why it's so important for the medical institutions to find out the right vendor in AI tools. And of course, the first thing that is come in mind is the unique risks in the healthcare AI implementation. Healthcare AI area is very different from the other areas and has its own very sensitive areas. For example, the clinical outcome liability, you need to understand that AI assisted diagnosis might, of course, affect negatively the patient. And of course, we need to take care that the patient harm won't be present when incorporated any kind of AI tool. And of course, no reputation of the clinic will be harmed with that. We need to understand that potentially some algorithmical biases might be present. So there might be not correct data set used for the training. Some representation of the results might be not applicable for this population, especially taking into account the migration between the different ethnic groups and the people around the world. You need to understand that we don't have homogenic population right now. And when implementing any kind of AI tools, we need to take in account in our head about the possibility biases in the models performance and how we can deal with them, how critical they might be for us. Then, of course, regulatory non-compliance penalties, because at the end of the day, AI tools are the part of the software as medical device certification. We need to be sure that the tools that we use, they are fully compliant and they won't bring, at the end of the day, as I said, no reputational damage for your medical institution. Then, of course, we have the patient safety implication. As the patient, if my doctor use AI tool, I want to be sure that, first of all, this AI tool is tested and it's safe. And the doctor can understand the boundaries of this AI tool. So AI tool can give some guidances, but at the end of the day, my doctor check these guidances and then, if it's needed, override algorithm suggestions. Then, of course, I want to understand that clinical doctors not over-rely on AI outputs. And being honest, guys, because a lot of the doctors in the different parts of the world, they work under the huge load on them. They tend just to take the solution that proposed for them, especially if the solution are claimed as effective, and just rely on their outputs. But it's very important to keep this automation bias under the control. And for me as the patient, to be sure that the doctor anyway recheck any kind of the advices from AI system and thinking still critically using AI as the second brain, but not as my own doctor. I want to have still the human doctor behind this. Alert fatigue. If I'm as the patient, I have the product that continuously sending me some alarms and the critical warnings. At the end of the day, I will be so unhappy with this, not to say more, and that I will just stop paying any attention to this alert. And then it can be critical for me if one needed alert will be there, but I will miss it. And of course, implementation and discontinuities, like the safety risk in this transition period, increase, of course, for the patient because the new workflows will be built. And in the meantime, I want as the patient be sure that the company, the clinic or the medical organization has the clear plan how to support me in this turbulence time when the workflows are disrupted and the new workflows are building up. One of the case studies here that is interesting to take a look is the IBM Watson healthcare challenges. So you might know that IBM is the famous in the Jeopardy game won. After that, of course, a lot of the hopes were around the AI from the IBM Watson side, and they stated that they want to go to the Watson for Oncology product, and of course, they want to implement AI not just for the telegames, but for the good of people. And they have gone through this timeline that you can see right now on the screen, starting from the great results from Jeopardy, and then, of course, investment in development and training of the system. And here they have used the particular guidelines, and they have already on the early stages saw some problems with the ambiguous interpretation or some contradictory medical information, but it's usually it's happened on the early stages. I assume that they thought with the practical implementation of these problems might be disappear or might be lower in risk, and then they have started the pilot testing at one of the medical organizations. And early results already revealed gaps in the system knowledge and a tendency to offer impractical or unsafe recommendation, raising concern about its readiness. But okay, it's happening. It's pilot. Maybe the data was bad. So because I think that the main problem, no one had the clear vision on this pilot assessment and on the clear evaluation of the tool. So that's why after the pilot testing, even despite these contradictory results, they have made the early launch in Thailand, India, and South Korea, exactly in the areas where the healthcare regulation in the software as medical devices are slightly different from US or EU. So it's usually the practice to test the tools there. And they finalized with a big skepticism among oncologists, mainly because the guidelines that were trained for that were used for the training of the system were totally different from the guidelines that are local, that are used there in these areas for the oncology practice. And that's why, of course, as a big company that led to the big media coverage, negative media coverage, and finalized that in 2021, Watson Health division was sold. What this case study can teach us, a few things. First of all, the pilot design, as we will be talking later on, should be quite clear. We need to understand the guidelines or the data that was used for the training. We need critical assess even on the early stages of the pilot and the results and how much they're applicable for our needs. And to take a bit of skepticism, even having the big tech companies playing in this field, they also can make mistakes. So it's not just for the startups, but for everyone who's entering healthcare. Then the next thing that we need to take into account is the potential risk is, of course, regulatory compliance requirements. We won't stop here a lot, but as I said, at the end of the day, AI tools are the part of the software as medical device certification. We have the different risk groups, and usually AI, if it's played as the clinical decision support, it might affect or harm the health of the patient. So it will be the category 2B or the category 3, which is very hard to achieve. And a lot of the startups just cannot go for that. So you need to clearly understand how critical for you to have even for the pilot program, the tool that is already certificated, or you might go with some kind of the approbation and be the early approbation, but not on the clinical setting, mainly in the research setting with the startup. You need to take this risk into consideration because, of course, if you go for the full rollout in the clinical setting with the tools that are not certificated, then the penalties can be on your side, especially if any harm will be made for the patient. So that's, I think that everyone understands, but important just to put the note about here. And then, of course, the data security consideration. We still hope that our vendors and AI providers has everything in place to secure the data, but still we have a lot of the cases when the breaches arise, not only in AI, but in generally in the big companies who support the databases for the huge healthcare organizations, the data breaches occur. And you need to understand that on the dark web, the healthcare data sometimes can be even more valuable than the financial data. And by the way, the longitude of the staying actual for the healthcare data is longer for the financial data. So it's really very valuable for the bad people to sell and to get some profit from it. And of course, you need to understand that AI brings the new complexity level. Yep, so the data can be not even directly stole from the database, but can be indirectly reverse engineered from AI system. So you need to speak honestly about this with the vendor, the strategy, how they protect and how they help, maybe with the federative AI learning to place the model on your side to be fully sure that no data will be leaked with the other providers or with the other health institutions who might be the part of the customer network of this vendor. Then the next session that we also need to cover is the technical evaluation framework. As I promised, no worries without a lot of the extensive, difficult technical burden. What's important here to understand that all AI is divided into things, is the black box and the explainable AI. The black box, basically everything that we're talking about, the generative AI neural networks, is the black box. This here that we cannot unbox the prediction and see how the system has made this output and what was the, for example, guidances on based on which the prediction was made. With the explainable AI, the situation is opposite. So it's more simple system, close to the traditional machine learning or even sometimes rule-based system, when each time we can understand what was the pathway and how exactly the system has made the prediction. In terms of the software as medical device certification, of course, only explainable AI system can be certificated. So like if you understand that this is the black box solution, it has no certification under it. If it's explainable AI system or simple, then it might be already certificated, and it means that both for the sake of safety of your patients, but also the sake of trust, building the trust in your medical colleagues in this AI tool, it's more better to have explainable AI, because then you can control the output. You can easily see if there is any flaws or any kind of the outdated guidelines you need, so you can easily retrain the system and have more reliable outputs all the time. That's about the transparency. So basically, there is like 5 steps framework that I advise you to go when assessing the transparency of the tool. First of all, of course, you need to define the cases and the explainability needs, because based on the different use cases, there might be different level of explainability needed. Then, of course, understanding this explainability need, you need to check vendor documentation for this explainability, so how much they correlate and how much the explainability of the model can bring the same level of the explainability as you need. Then, of course, clinical and technical assessment. So you have the documentation, but you also assess on your side with the technical and clinical team if the explainability level that status as documentation is the real one. Then you go through the regulatory and legal considerations. So among this explainability, how much it also protected from the, for example, certification side, and then of course decision on the pilot project. If you don't go with that, if you don't have the clear understanding about the level of explainability, you have the high risk that at the end of the day, the model that you will pilot, that you will invest time and resources into, won't be workable or might be harmful for your patients. Performance benchmarking, I think that this is the place where a lot of the startups, a lot of the, not only startups in general, a lot of the companies in the AI field as AI vendors, they play the bet game, because sometimes they select the benchmark and the indexes that gives you the feeling that the model is great. But at the end of the day, when you try it in the clinical setting, it's not so great. So it's important to understand, and we will speak about it on the next slide, which, for example, metrics you should assess and how you should select them for your use case. Then it's important to understand that there is a big gap between the research setting and real world performance. So if it's stated like accuracy 90%, in the research paper, doesn't mean that the accuracy in the performance in the clinical setting will be the same. It might be degraded, and you need to assess this degradation, how much it's affordable as a risk on your side, and if you can go with that. So it's needed to be clearly stated as one of the points to follow up during the pilot program. And of course, the generalizability. So either it's consistent during the different parts of the population, of your patient population, or it has some kind of the bias itself, and how you can work with that. Metrics plays the crucial role. As I said, sometimes companies just show you the metrics that will please you, but they have um, no good ground under them. For example, all AI vendors like very much high accuracy to show it, and usually the first thing that you will see in the research publication, why it's flawed, because it can mask high false negatives. They don't give you the information about the negative predictive value and true skill statistic. So it's like it just makes you fall in love with the model, but basically it gives you no information about the real performance in the real scenario. And of course, there might be the class imbalance blindnesses, because you just see the sensitivity and the specificity. That's the next thing that is comes after the accuracy that the company show, but it doesn't encounter the rare events or outliers that might be also in the clinical practice. So just mislead you. And of course, there's also the gap between the benchmarking that the companies are showing and the bedside performance. As I said, that's exactly the research and the real life. So if the company has previously no experience bringing this technology into the clinical setting, then you basically have no information how it will behave in the company or in the institution like yours. And all of this means that before you will start any kind of the conversation with the vendors, you need to understand your use case, and you need to understand which the indicators are the most important for you in regard to your use case. Not something that the companies will show you, but what really needed from you. And for this, you need to speak with the medical community. We need to speak with your medical team and define these metrics. Only after that, you come to the companies and you say, okay, the accuracy is great and your sensitivity is great, but show us exactly these numbers, how we can assess them, and also to understand if it's just the research metrics that you're showing us, or you have already made some kind of the bedside performance and you can assess based on your previous experience the bedside performance metrics. Only if you have this clear picture, then you're ready. If you rely on the accuracy or the numbers that the vendors are showing to you, welcome to the site of misleading decisions. Here's one of the case studies that can show it. And I'm not saying that this project is bad. So I'm just showing you how playing with the statistic can mislead you a little bit. So we have the CheckXNet Stanford pneumonia detection model. And in the validation methodology, they have a one-score benchmarking that is also high prevalent among the models to show how exactly AI model can surpass the radiology specialist. Why we have here the problem? First of all, F1 focus has the bias because it addresses class imbalance and it risks overlooking critical clinical metrics like negative predictive value or misdiagnosis. It, as I said, it brings you the good value that the model is stable, that is very effective, but at the end of the day, it can be not informative for you to take the informative decision. And this comparative design of this research was also not very good design, because it stated that it outperformed the radiologists, and still there was then a radiologist specialist who has outperformed this model, but it was not included into this conclusion. So it's very important to understand that also the people can bring, of course, some problems into this map, because it's also stated as the question how exactly this comparison with the radiologist was made, which radiologist was taken into account, how they assess, and how all this design was made. But in this research study, the information is very limited about this. And if you have the vendor who's coming with you with such kind of the research publication, then with a high probability, if you are not prepared for this, you might fall as a victim of this misleading information. Doesn't mean that the vendor lying to you. Just show the information that is not relevant for you. For you, it's relevant to understand the level of your radiologist, to understand the metrics that you need, and then really compare the performance of this model or performance of this AI tool based on your own needs and on your own workflow to understand that it really will cover some needs and it will bring you the positive value. Then, of course, the huge thing, the huge issue that hopefully we will discuss in the live format next time is about the existing IT infrastructure and the capabilities to integrate AI tools into this. Being honest, a lot of the medical institutions still have a fragmented IT infrastructure. The data is separated between the different instances, and it's really the technical stack is outdated. So speaking about the possibility to connect your IT infrastructure with the AI model, it means that it should be compatible for the API integration and the data synchronization, which is the question that you need to understand. And then, of course, interpretability standards compliance. Yep, so which data was used for the training based on which standards and compared with the data and the standards that you use in your institution. That's important. And the overall, I would say that before you will go to any kind of the idea or ideation process about AI vendors or developing your own AI, it's the same. You need to critically assess your IT infrastructure, how much it's ready for this. So how flexible it is, where's the borders, how you can go. Because if your system is not API applicable at all, or your system is really outdated, better not to start with AI because you will have a lot of the headache. And at the end of the day, your technical team and clinical team, they will be just overloaded with a lot of the work that has no sense. Assess it before, have the very good documentation, everything should be structured. Then you can think about AI and thinking how exactly AI in which areas of this IT process it can be implemented to create the minimum destruction. Section 3 about the vendor due diligence. So basically understanding everything that we have on our side and all the pre-requirements, we of course come to the question how to form the conversation with the vendors and AI development companies. First of all is the regulatory compliance verification. As I said, we don't need to stop on this topic a lot because we understand the need based on the different regions. It might be the different certification, FDA, it might be the software medical device certification, the GDPR, and so on. It should be based on the needs of your area where you're located, and you need to speak either the company already has acquired some certification or the plan for the acquiring and how everything will be going on and how much your institution might be involved in the certification process. Then, of course, track record assessment. So, as I said, if the company has already made only research, it's the level of risk. You would be definitely looking for the companies that have already some kind of the traction, they have already piloted it, and hopefully with the good results in the other clinics. So you need to gather from the vendor some kind of the healthcare client references, understanding that the size of these medical institutions that have already made the pilot programs and how much their complexity is the same as yours. And then, of course, implementation history. So what exactly part of or how exactly this cooperation was built, only the pilot or some kind of the extended cooperation programs and so on. And then, of course, customer retention metrics. Definitely how many of the clients after the pilot decided to sign up the full program or the full cooperation with the company, and also how long they stayed within the full cooperation, because maybe the results of the pilot were great, but at the end of the day, they have analyzed that the solution is not applicable for the real life. And of course, in this list, like checking the published validation studies should be the last one for you. So firstly, you need to understand the practical thing and then come to the research publications, because the companies who will propose the AI tools, they do in the same way. They firstly show you the studies, saying that everything's okay, but then maybe sometimes not delivering all the information about the practical cases. So be very smart about it and really concentrate on the real life use cases. If you're talking about the startups, of course, financial stability evaluation is super important. Yep, so you need to understand the business model, you need to understand the cash flow, you understand the dependency on the investors and in which stage of the investment the company is currently in. So if company is already running out of the cash and need to go to the investment in the nearest time, it can be the risky. So you need to really to frame your cooperation in the way to secure risk. Then the healthcare market focus, because also sometimes company play in the two markets, and if there's like the particular fresh startups, they try the different areas. So you need to understand that the focus will be still in the healthcare area, and you say that your input into this project, your time and the people, sometimes money also, this also makes sense, and you're protected that nothing will change. Acquisition history, either the company was acquired by another in the last few months or last year, or the company planned to be also acquired by other companies, should be, of course, openly discussed with you for you to understand the strategy and how company, the health of the company, and how the company want to develop. And customer concentration risk. If it's just the startup, sometimes it's happened. The startups has a lot of the small clients, and they lose the point of attention because in startups not so many people are present. So you need to understand the map of the customers and how they plan to go. And if they plan to acquire the big customer in the near time, it's better also to be negotiated, because it can affect the customer conversation or the customer support on your side. Data governance practice, also very important thing to understand who owns the data rights at the end of the day. Yep. So you should be very clear, and you should protect your rights to have the final usage right on your own data. And then, of course, intellectual property development. If you train on your data the models of this company, then you need to speak about the ownership of AI models that were trained on your institutional data. Data retention policies, that's also very important. Duration, how long the AI vendor can store your data on their side if it's needed, if it's part of your conversation. And also the most important thing is really the data deletion, your data deletion from the vendor platform. So if you decided to stop cooperation, you should have the possibility to completely erase your data and go out without compromising any kind of the data usage rights on your side. Now we will speak also briefly about the contractual safeguards, so how to form the contract with the vendors to be safe. Here we have four main pillars that you need to go through. First of all, you need to clearly define contractual terms and conditions, protect data ownership and usage right, correct service level agreements, and exit strategy planning. Let us dive a little bit in each of this area. So first of all, what does it mean to put the key contractual terms and conditions? You need the vendor to guarantee you about the performance, because there is some metrics, as we have spoken previously, that somehow can change from the research to the bad site performance. That's why you need to be sure that if there will be degradation in this performance, how you can build the financial remedies for this underperformance. Yep. So what's okay for you, this risk of floating between the metrics, and where's already the area where it's not applicable for you, so that the financial remedies can be applied. And then, of course, algorithmic drift monitoring. AI system degrade in the performance with the time, and you need to be sure that your vendor provide the possibility for ongoing performance validation, not only from your side, but from the vendor side. And the most important, the model update management. So because we have the drift in the performance, how exactly the vendor can support you with updating the model, and how this process will be organized for you to be clear that you understand all the changes in the performance, and you can adapt to these changes, and you have the newest version on your side with all the documentation that is needed. In the data ownership and usage right, I have marked two main things that are super important for you to speak with the vendor. First of all is the data training ownership, as I said, and again, it's super important because sometimes medical institutions underestimate this problem, and then at the end of the day, it's not clearly stated, and the companies can use it to save at least some budgets in the data on their side. And then, of course, data deletion requirements. Also, as I said, the clear requirements that after you have finalized your cooperation, how exactly the procedure will follow to terminate the contract and to extract or delete all the data from the vendor platform. That's super important to state in the agreement, and it should be very clearly defined for you not to have any kind of the problems in the future. In the service level agreements, also we have two potential risky area then you have to spend the attention into. First of all, performance response times. Latency is one of the key indicators of AI system, especially if you integrate it as the part of the crucial workflows. It might be the administrative, it might be also clinical decision support. You need to be sure that this latency will be as little as possible, and also not in the research environment, but on the bedside performance. That's why it's important to put the requirements for the latency and continuously evaluate if the AI tool is still within this requirement time or the latency that you have stated. And also the next step, of course, if it's outside, so how you can either change the model, change the processes, or maybe if it's not applicable, the financial remedies also around this. And this, of course, brings us to the clinical accuracy monitoring, so the ongoing monitoring and the validation of performance against the benchmarks that was stated before. As I said, it should be put in the service level agreements for you to be sure that the company, the vendor, is also taking proactive steps to support the latency, to support the speed of work, but also support the quality of the output from the all sides. And the exit strategy, here we have also two important things: data extraction right. If any data was used, not only delete, but maybe extract them on your side with the labels that might be important for you. And the second important thing is, of course, knowledge transfer. Yep. So how you can get the documentation for the custom implementation if it's needed, if you decide to go with a portion of this tool, or maybe if you want to in the future to have any kind of the connection with this tool, and you need to have the clear documentation for this. The last section about the best practices for the implementation. So when building the pilot program, based on my experience, there is a few very important steps that you need to go through. And without the steps, unfortunately, you cannot have the effective pilot program. So the steps are, of course, the scope definition. You need to understand very limited clinical areas and the patient population for the initial project, initial pilot program. You need to be sure that you understand the case, you understand the KPIs or the indicators around this case, and you can build the population for this. Then, of course, we have the success criteria. Yep, as I said, the metrics that goes beyond the technical performance, the metrics that concentrated around the clinical performance. Then you have the duration plan. And so if you have the pilot program within the couple of years, definitely too long for you. So you have to have a very clear definition of this duration, and this duration should be sufficient for your needs. Then we have the resource allocation. You have to decide if you have enough the medical people and the technical people to support the pilot program, if it's feasible at all. And very important to decide on go or no go decision framework before you will start the pilot program, or you can fall the victim of being in the situation when like you have already been in the pilot program, you have used to this AI tool, and then we say yes to it, but we have no clear metrics how we say yes or no to it. So decision on this go or no go framework should be made even before you will start the pilot program. In the success metrics, it's important to understand that we have the clinical outcome measures that we need to understand and take into consideration when deciding on AI model. We have the operational metrics, user adoption, patient experience. It's dependable on the area, of course, or the use case that we will have. But the most important to understand that it will go at the end of the day to the financial impact. And from my experience, the important thing is that the operational team or the business team of the healthcare institution should work very close with the clinical team to define the success metrics and to put everything in place, not just doctor be happy with the clinical results, but also for the business side to be happy with the cost savings or any kind of the business outcomes from this. Only then, when you put all this metrics together, you can have the model that will satisfy all sides, and with this, the model that will be effective or effectively implemented inside your clinical institution. The final key takeaways from our today's session should be the next. First of all, you need to be very clear on the risk assessment. For this, you need to have the clear case. You need to understand how to assess it. You need to have the team and the people and resources to make it. And then only after this, you can start thinking about AI implementation. Then, of course, you have the stages of the assessment from the certification side, the assessment from the technical side, the assessment from the clinical performance side, and so on. All of this should be made as transparent as possible with all the documentation provided from the vendor side, and of course from the involvement or this cross-functional teams from your side. Then you need to have the contractual protection. Yep, so you have all the documents and all the information. This document should be connected with your needs, with your workflows and the use cases that you have. And then you have to design the implementation excellence. Yes, so you need to build this pilot program in the needed way. You need to make this pre-work before you will start the negotiation, before you will go into some kind of the discussion with the vendors. You need to have the good vision on the case. You need to have the good vision on the pilot program and the methods that can somehow say yes or no to this exact tool. I hope this section was informative for you. Of course, we have made just the very brief discussion about the very important topics. If you're interested to dive into some of them, or you have some practical cases where you need the help, you can contact me all the time. Some part of this discussion will be later on, hopefully implemented as the live webinars in the LinkedIn. Until then, as usually, you can reach me anytime in LinkedIn. I will be happy to answer all your questions and provide more information on the things, on the personal perspective that you might have in your organization. With this, I thank you very much for your time, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.